Sierra Goodwill, joined by Evan Lazar. He's at Gillette Stadium. We promise he's just in his car. Evan, how you doing?
I'm doing well. It's a little bit hot down here today, so I got the door open trying to bring in the air from the outside, but no complaints.
I can't hear Evan, but I'm hoping that you guys can, so I'm going to go off of lip reading right now, but we got a question.
Can you hear me now?
I can't hear you at all, but I'm just going to go with it.
I'm jumping in. I'm jumping in. Third man in.
I can't hear anyone. I can't hear John.
Sierra, why don't you jump off and back on, and I bet you'll be able to hear, and I'll carry it until you're back, and as soon as you're back, we'll do this the right way. Okay?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Do you want me to leave?
Yes. Evan, first things first, she'll be back, and I promise anybody at home who was here for Sierra, she'll replace me in 2 seconds. But question or no question, I think one of the things people were concerned with that we saw all over Twitter was Oshesky getting hurt and whether he was there. Before you answer, I'm going to check on Sierra and see whether she hears us. Sierra, can you hear us?
I can hear John.
Can you hear me?
I can hear Evan.
There we go.
We tested this before. I'm going to leave now, but I was just asking Evan about Oshesky. I'll let him answer that, and then you guys can take it the rest of the way.
Cool.
So Oshesky was off to the side with the trainers for a little while, working on his ankle, it seemed like. Personally, it looked to me like he could have gone back out there. He had his helmet on, was ready to go, and the coaches kind of just held him out of the end of practice. I'm sure if it was a game, if it was any sort of regular season game or playoff game or something like that, he would have kind of toughed it out. But there's obviously no reason to push it at this stage.
Well, one big storyline it seemed like from today was N'Keal Harry, another good day for him, but his beef potentially with Michael Jackson. Talk to me about what was going on there.
I have no idea what was going on there, quite frankly. I think that Jackson, I believe, went to the University of Florida. N'Keal obviously went to Arizona State. They don't play each other too often, so I don't think it was about that. So it wasn't like a college, beef or holdover or anything like that, I don't think. Now, maybe Jackson went up against him a little bit in that Detroit preseason game, and Detroit joint practices last year during his rookie season. I think it stems from that because the two of them probably would have been in the same sort of boat in terms of reps and where they were playing in terms of, being a starter, being a backup, that kind of thing at that stage of training camp. So my gut tells me that it's a carryover from whatever happened last summer with joint practices and with the preseason games against Detroit. And maybe they got into it a little bit then, but two really physical guys, two fiery guys, obviously super competitive, but definitely physical, and they want to be big. They want to play that way, and you want to set the tone that I'm going to be a guy that's going to push you around, and neither one of them kind of wants to back down. That's what we're seeing right now.
Was Harry dominating in terms of the one-on-one, or does Michael Jackson have any chance of making this roster?
Well, I think Michael Jackson does have a good chance to make the team. Harry, the reason why they got into it twice, actually. The first time was just on a regular 11-on-11 team drill where Michael Jackson took a little bit exception to N'Keal Harry's run blocking. Then they were doing a drill where they specifically designed for run blocking, not a team drill, more of like a technique drill. And Harry actually put Michael Jackson into the ground, really kind of finished his block through the whistle. And that is when it kind of started to really flare up. So I actually like what I've seen a lot from Michael Jackson, though, this training camp. He's, to me, playing much better at this stage than what we've seen out of Juwan Williams, using that size, using that length, using that physicality to actually make a difference here.
N'Keal Harry weighing in here saying no backing down. Let's talk about another wide receiver who's gotten a lot of buzz this camp. Again, Gunnar Oshesky. We have a question. Does he look like a legit wide receiver for the NFL now?
Exactly. He really does. And I think the most shocking part about it to me is how he's reinvented his body in such a short period of time. A much bigger, much more compact, much more muscular, more explosive. Just looks, before we made jokes about it on our last Q&A, I think it was, where I said that he looked like they brought him over from Foxboro High just to go through some drills with the team. But now he looks like a guy that belongs in this league. And I don't think that there's any question anymore that Gunnar Oshesky is going to make this team. The question now is how good can he be? can he really be a top 3 receiver for the Patriots and play a lot of snaps, whether it's outside or inside? He's doing it all right now. So again, not a question of is he going to make the 53. I think he's definitely going to make the 53. The question is how much is he going to play and how well can he play during the regular season?
Very interesting. Well, we also heard from Terrence Brooks today, who seems like he's feeling a lot more comfortable with the Patriots system as a whole. Do you see him as the front runner for starting alongside McCourty at safety, or do you think it's more so going to be Kyle Duggar or Adrian Phillips?
I think that right now it's definitely more between Duggar and Brooks, and I think Brooks is going to play early on, and maybe he'll give way to Duggar later on in the season. But I think the one thing that you're seeing with Brooks is that he was already pretty good in terms of covering tight ends, playing in the box, doing things like that. But now he's sort of taking that next step in terms of a leadership role, really communicating very well out there, setting a tone, teaching the younger guys, and kind of taking on that sort of leadership type of responsibilities that they lost a lot from that secondary with Patrick Chung and Duron Harmon not there anymore. They do need another guy to be talking, to be vocal, to be a sort of a veteran in the room. And that's what we're seeing a lot of out of Terrence Brooks lately is that sort of leadership. So he said he's learning a lot, in particular from Stephon Gilmore. They're kind of teaching him up on his press coverage techniques because we know that Brooks is going to be matched up a lot against tight ends. So that's cool to hear, that the two of those guys are kind of exchanging notes and going through techniques and talking football before and after practice. And I think that Brooks right now is the leader in the clubhouse to replace Patrick Chung. And then we'll see what happens with Duggar as we go along here.
And we have a question. Who to you has stood out so far, surprisingly, in camp?
A surprise. I mean, Gunner's definitely the biggest surprise, but besides Gunner, I think the guy that stood out the most that was maybe a little bit of a surprise was Devon Ross. I don't think he wasn't out at practice today. He was either dealing with something or whatever, but he has really shown that he's a really successful route runner, and he understands how to move guys off their spots at the line of scrimmage, how to set up defenders in his route breaks and create separation and get open, even though he's not necessarily the fastest guy in the world. He's not a complete burner on the outside or anything like that. He's a 4.5, mid 4.5 guy in the 40-yard dash, but he's able to really create separation with technique and fundamentals. He's got really strong hands, too, to finish plays at the catch point. So definitely not a receiver that anybody had on their radar to make the 53-man coming out of camp. Now I think he's really pushing guys like Jacoby Myers for a roster spot.
We have a bunch of questions here flooding in on YouTube, a lot of them about Devin Asiasi and Dalton Keene, both of them. How many snaps you think they're going to take and whether or not they've lived up to the expectations, because we know you are high on Asiasi. Has he lived up to that so far in camp?
He really has. And I think the one thing with Oshesky, I knew he could run routes. I knew he was going to be able to create separation and get open at the top of his route. He's got great quickness, great footwork, all those types of things. It's been the blocking. And I think that's the biggest thing that you have to look at for any Patriots tight end. You're not going to get on the field for Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels if you can't block at the tight end position. It's the first kind of box you need to check. And we've seen Asiasi out here do a really good job of blocking just, his basic blocks on the line of scrimmage. Nothing too fancy, just kicking guys out or getting up to the second level or whatever the case may be. But he's really done a very good job of that right away. And that's definitely going to help him play more than just third down, red area, fourth quarter, all that kind of stuff. If he can really be a consistent blocker, then he could be a guy that plays 50, 60% of the snaps as a rookie. As far as Keene goes, I thought today was his best day. Blocking wise, he's still actually a work in progress. I know a lot of people thought that was going to be his strength, but he's a versatile blocker and they can do a bunch of different things with him. But at the main thing though I'm seeing is that his power and his pad level into his engagements it's a work in progress. But he did made some plays in the passing game today, and the one thing that you definitely see with him is those opportunities to run after the catch. They're leaking him out of the backside of formations, getting him in space, getting him alone in space on the backside against a weak side linebacker or whatever the case may be. And that's, I think, a good opportunity for him to create after the catch with that type of skill set that he has. And he's also done a decent job of pushing the ball up the seam as well. And he seems to give linebackers a little bit of something to think about when he's starting to run up the seam, especially off of play action.
And after Sunday's practice, you did a video on Mohamed Sanu and how he could potentially be a surprise cut. Do you still think that's the case a couple practices later?
Well, I think the difficult thing for Sanu is that he's such a pro. He's such a pro receiver that he goes about his business the right way. He runs routes the right way, and he is getting open underneath the defense some here in these practices. But the issue is that the downfield plays are few and far between, right? And I don't know. Personally, I think that Sanu ends up making the team just because even though Gunner has shown well, Devon Ross has shown well, Damari Bird has shown well, we don't know if those guys are going to be consistently able to play 60, 70, 80 snaps a game and be able to give the Patriots something. Those guys might be more matchup situation specific type players for this season, and Sanu is the type of player that can really play 70 snaps a game and give you some consistency and some professionalism out of that spot. I would be worried about that sort of consistent level of play from those other guys if they do cut Sanu. So to me, Edelman, Sanu, Harry sounds like a really good top three. You bring Bird in when you want to bring in some more speed, Gunner in that same category as well, and you kind of rotate in from there. I think that they're playing with fire by cutting Sanu because I don't know if they have a third guy that can play that level of snaps and be consistently good.
And we have to quickly just touch on the kicking situation. Patriots signed Nick Folk to challenge Justin Rohrwasser, who was struggling. What's the issue with Rohrwasser? Is it his power? Is it his consistency? And is he flat out not going to make this team?
I don't know if he's going to make the team. And to answer your question, flat out, maybe no. I really don't know if he's going to make this team right now. The good advantage for him, though, is that I don't think a lot of people are going to be looking to add him on the practice squad or onto their 53-man roster after the camp that he has had. So maybe they can develop him on the practice squad for a season while Folk takes on the kicking duties on a regular basis. But the biggest issue with Rohrwasser, to answer the question, is the ball just does not consistently come off his foot the same way twice. One time it's wide left, one time it's wide right. One time it's doinking off. He loves to doink one guy off the uprights. I mean, he hits the goalpost so many times, more often than he makes them. So that's the issue, is that the ball is just flying all over the place. And that's really sort of difficult, I would say, for a coach to be confident in your kicker when you don't know if he's going to kick the ball right down the middle or if it's going to end up, in the corner of the end zone. So that's what we're going through right now with Rohrwasser. He's shaky at best. I mean, that's putting it politely. And he's kind of an adventure out there right now.
Well, let's talk Cam Newton because we have to. And I think at this point, it's pretty safe to say he's the starter for week one, at least based on reps, opportunity, how he's performing. How have you seen the Patriots offense now evolve or maybe add some new dimension with Newton taking the majority of the reps?
It's a great question, and I wish that I could get into very specific to what they're doing, but we're not allowed to do that.
Yep.
All I can say is right now is that I wish that fans could see how well Cam Newton has played over the last 2 days. Making throws down the field, hitting J.J. Taylor today, hitting Gunnar Oshesky today, hitting N'Keal Harry on a back shoulder throw today, doing it all. And the other thing is with sort of to answer the question about the schemes and stuff like that, they're running an offense that I would say resembles something like the 2015 Carolina Panthers, where there's a lot of different things going on with Cam's legs and his mobility. It's definitely a factor. The Patriots fans are going to love it. I mean, they really are, because it's a total reinventation of the offense. And that's to say they haven't thrown out the playbook quite yet. They still have, droplings, and it still resembles some of the passing concepts, certainly still resemble a lot of what they would do normally with Tom Brady and stuff like that. But the fact that his legs are now a factor, I think, is opening up the entire offense, because it really fits the skill set of the personnel that they have better than a guy that's just going to stand in the pocket. Strong offensive line, big receivers that are willing to block on the outside, tight ends that can block, a stable of running backs that you can hand the ball off to. So the Patriots are using all of the things that you would expect them to use with Cam Newton, and it's really fun to watch out here. And people are going to be excited to see it. I can guarantee you that.
Well, a ton of questions here also about Earl Thomas and whether or not you think the Patriots should consider bringing him in. Would he be a good fit here?
Listen, he would be an awesome fit here in terms of schematics, in terms of football. I also think his intensity that we saw him, kind of get released by Baltimore for throwing his helmet and kind of starting fights with teammates, obviously you can't start fights here, but that level of intensity is going to be matched by everybody in this organization. So I don't think that he's going to feel like he needs to pry it out of people if he were to come here, like maybe he was feeling like at times in Baltimore. But to answer your question, he's gonna look to get paid, and I don't see the Patriots handing out any big contracts at this point in time. But with that being said, if there is a free safety that's better than Devin McCourty to play in this defense, it might be Earl. He's the type of guy that can really range over the top and really protect things over the top. You put two guys with Devin and Earl Thomas next to each other in this defense, that is going to be one scary, scary pass defense for opposing offenses. And I don't think it will happen, but that's that would be the piece of resistance to get Earl Thomas in here. That would be a lot of fun.
Sticking with the defensive side of the ball just for another minute here, the pass rush. Has anyone popped off to you? I know you were concerned about the pass rush, and then they had a good day on Monday. Who has been impressing you on that side of the ball in those front seven?
Much better day on Monday, like you said, a couple of sacks for Josh Uche, which is nice to see rushing off the edge. That explosiveness definitely showed up sometimes at the end of practice yesterday. Today, Adam Butler back in the backfield. He seems to be living back there. He's the guy that's been the most consistent pass rusher that they've had. I mean, maybe Dietrich Wise. Him or Dietrich Wise have both been pretty good. But Butler, from a down-to-down perspective, just consistently in the backfield. He burned Corey Cunningham pretty badly today, went right around him for a sack in team drills. He's having a hell of a camp, and I think he's going to have a huge season this year. The other guy that I would mention in all of that mix is actually Derek Rivers. Rivers has had quietly a pretty decent camp, and I think that's it's shocking, and I honestly think that there might actually be a chance he makes the team, which is, again, a little bit of a surprise, I think, to a lot of people. His ability, his athleticism always been there. He's always been a guy that pops off the line of scrimmage and has that initial burst out of his stance and first step quickness. Now he's combining it with a little bit better pad level and rush timing, and he's getting underneath guys and using his bend and using leverage to get underneath and turn the corner. He's had a decent camp as well, but really the stars of the pass rush so far, I would say, are Butler, Wise, and then, of course, our guy Winnow. He's always out there doing something, right? So He's never quiet. That's for sure.
Winnow making sure everyone know that the key to his success is milk. Kid loves milk. Big supporter of the dairy farmers around the country. Made sure everyone knew it today. Let's switch over to the offense. I had a question a little while ago. How long until Damien Harris takes over Sony Michel's job? How's he been looking?
Maybe September 13th against the Miami Dolphins, or I think it's the 13th, right? And I think what we see with Damien Harris here, definitely a little bit more juice, I would say, than Sony, certainly last year. Now, not more juice than rookie Sony. I think rookie Sony and this year Damien Harris have very similar running styles. The same burst, the same kind of wiggle, but very, very good at cutting, decisive cuts, getting north-south, understanding his rushing lanes, understanding where his space is and how to get to that kind of void of space to create in the open field, and a very good compact runner, good, kind of body control, contact balance to run through tackles, run through weak tackles. But Harris definitely showing a lot more versatility. He's already catching more passes out of the backfield than Sony ever has. So I think that that's sort of where they're going with this. Is Damien Harris, I think, is going to be involved. We know Rex and James White are going to be involved. And don't sleep on J.J. Taylor. I think he might have a role on this team as well, depending on the injury situations with Michelle and Lamar Miller. But right now, you almost feel like, there's no favors handed out in the NFL. There's no, we feel bad for you, so we're going to give you a job. But Damien Harris has been out here every single day since the start of open camp to the media last week, and he has been the best running back in camp for the Patriots so far. And that has to mean something, right? That has to mean something when it comes to the regular season. When a guy's consistently been out there, consistently performing well, he should have a chance to play when it comes to the games.
We have a question about how the rookies are looking so far. We know Kyle Duggar was super impressive in that first week. Devon Ross, Dalton Keene heavily involved. How have they been as a group?
They've been good. I think that this is a really good rookie class, what we've seen out of them so far. The rookie tight ends, both of them have some things that they're good at and are showing those kind of skills. Ossie, I think, is the more refined player, certainly, and will play more early on than Keene. But Keene is starting to pick up some steam here the last couple of days. Duggar, we know what he did last week, living around the football, playing great defense in the secondary. That's all well and good. We've seen a lot of Josh Uche He's played both off the line, on the line, doing a little bit of everything, and really doing all of it, more kind of in the sense of boom or bust with him, I would say, because sometimes the reads and his sort of keys and understanding with the game from a mental standpoint, the game's still moving a little bit quick for him, I would say, at this stage. But then you also do see, the 2 sacks yesterday. He made a great play down by the goal line, shooting a gap on Sunday. So you see some of those kind of bright spots or highlight plays. So that's nice to see. And Freddie Jennings today was the first day where I saw some extended action from him in team drills. He looks really good in space, so a lot better in coverage than I was sort of expecting. His ability to drop off and play in coverage, play underneath zones, play the flat was out here today a lot. They've tried to run a misdirection play against him, and they tried to kind of leak the running back out of the backfield after some stuff in the backfield with fakes and whatnot with Cam, and he was able to actually stay with the back and tackle Rex Burkhead short of the goal line. So he's playing very well in coverage. Uche is being used all over the field. This is a really good rookie class so far, at least. We'll see if it translates when they get out there on September 13th. But right now, it's looking like the Patriots hit on a lot of these picks.
Someone here called the linebacking group weak. Now that you've talked about Uche and Anthony Jennings, now they're rookies, but they're performing at a high level, and Chase Winovich taking on a much bigger role, Juwan Bentley doing his job. Would you characterize this group as weak?
It's top heavy. I hate to use the word weak or anything like that. If you want that stuff, you can go turn on 98.5 right now. I'm sure they got plenty of people, trashing on the Patriots roster. But I think the biggest thing with this linebacker group right now is that you know what you're going to get with Bentley. He's going to sort of be the early down run stuffer. I think Uche, once he does start to develop from a mental standpoint, is going to be good. But right now, he's pretty raw. Then I think that all the guys that they have playing on the line of scrimmage are ready to go. Guys like John Simon, Brandon Copeland, Shalik Calhoun, Chase Winovich, obviously. If you're going to play outside linebacker on the line, I think that they're pretty safe there. The question really is there depth at inside linebacker or off the ball? Juwan Bentley can play there, obviously. Uche can play there, but is it going to be Cash Malaway? Is it going to be Terez Hall, who's had a decent start to camp? Who's going to be sort of those 3rd, 4th, 5 guys in those inside linebacker group? That's going to be sort of the place where I think the depth could hurt them, but at the same time, they're going to play so many packages with 6 defensive backs on the field, 5 or 6 defensive backs on the field, that really the only time that they're going to run like your traditional 3-4 or 4-3 is maybe on first down, depending on the matchup. As soon as they get to 2nd and long, as soon as they get to 3rd down, they're going to flood the field with defensive backs, and there's not going to be a lot of linebackers out there anyways.
Going back to the running back position quickly, I feel like we always forget about James White, or he just flies under the radar because he's just so consistent. He's always going to be there, and he's always going to get the job done. Do you think that his usage will go up now with Cam Newton as the quarterback?
We are definitely starting to see Cam realize, that guy Christian McCaffrey I had was pretty good in Carolina, but James White can definitely do some of the same things as well. So they connected a few times in practice today, a nice wheel route in 7-7s up the right sideline where Cam hit James White for a big play. He then came back in 11-on-11s and hit James White on a little angle route coming over the middle of the field. So there's a lot going on there. They certainly are trying to build that chemistry up, and I definitely feel like Cam is going to use James White in the passing game a lot like he used Christian McCaffrey in Carolina. And I think that those guys are going to be work very well together.
2 guys, Devon Ross and Jeff Thomas. Devon Ross, a lot of hype during camp, but has quieted down the last couple of days. Jeff Thomas, a lot of hype before camp, but we haven't heard much of him since. Your evaluation of those 2 guys?
Jeff Thomas is Mr. MIA right now. I know that there was a lot of guys that got swept up in those false positives with the COVID-19 testing. There are some murmurs that that's why Jeff Thomas has missed all these practices. A lot of those guys, though, are already back, so I'm not really sure what's going on exactly with Jeff Thomas. It's a sticky situation at this point because obviously the guy is super talented, and you see that in his college tape, but right now, realistically, odds are he's probably not going to make the 53. agree. I'm sure that they can find a way to stash him on the practice squad because he's barely played. So who's going to really pick him up at this stage? But really, we haven't seen anything to evaluate him on. He was out there I think, for 2 practices, both of which he was limited in, only did positional drills, ran routes against air. He has not done a competitive rep yet in practice, whether it's a one-on-one or a team drill or whatever the case may be. We have seen nada out of him. So it's really been a difficult situation right now for Jeff Thomas.
And we have a question here from Danny in 7v7 or 11s. Does the offense look better than the defense or vice versa?
I think that they really kind of have both made plays. It's tough to kind of say right now which one looks better or which one looks worse. The defense, the secondary competes every single snap. That defense, those DBs are really fun to watch. Guys like J.C. Jackson, Stephon Gilmore, they might get beat on occasion. Everybody gets beat sometimes, but they're always competitive. They're always right there. I don't think there's any cornerback in camp right now for the Patriots that forces guys to battle through more contact than J.C. Jackson. He just is on everybody all the time. And if you do catch one on him, you're catching it through a battle. It's not going to be an easy one. So those guys are all playing extremely well. They're ready to go. I don't see that secondary missing too much of a beat. Really, the question to me with the defense has always just been, can they generate the pass rush that they're going to need? Can they have guys like Uche, guys like Jennings, guys like Winovich replace KVN and Collins and Hightower and all the guys that they lost this offseason? That's ultimately going to be what decides if there's any regression whatsoever with this defense.
Back to N'Keal Harry, because there's never enough N'Keal Harry talk. Has he looked better in his route running?
He has definitely, over the last 2 days, looked a lot better at the line of scrimmage, which to me is the key. I know a lot of people want to write about his route breaks and talk about his route breaks and what he's doing at the top of the route, but he is never going to be Julian Edelman. He's never going to be Mr. Shifty at the top of the route. It's just not his game. It's not his makeup. What he really focused on this offseason with the footwork king and with his training down there in Houston was the line of scrimmage, because with a guy like that, he's so big, right? He's 6'3", 220 pounds. With that size, that catch radius, that physicality, if you can create room for yourself at the line of scrimmage to get down the field, that's when you can start to set up the high point fades, when you can start to set up the back shoulder throws, and you can unlock his skill set a little bit. So what we have seen over the last 2 days is him be able to move guys at the line of scrimmage a lot more, which is really good for me to see, because I think that will open opportunities down the field for him to use his size. Once you beat somebody at the line of scrimmage, now they're in trail mode and they're kind of chasing the play and they have to play the hands and they can't look back for the ball. And that's when N'Keal Harry can really use his skill set to his advantage. We haven't been able to see him after the catch because these are not live tackling sessions, so there's not much to glean from after the catch, but we also know what he can do there. So if they can kind of optimize his skill set of contested balls down the field, opportunities to create after the catch and get into yak mode, then I think that he can be a really useful receiver for this team, especially in the red zone and down by the goal line where he showed up well the last couple of days.
I'll take a couple more questions here. The latest with the right tackle position, it was a Yadni Kajust versus Jermaine Illuminor battle. Is that still the case?
It's really Jermaine Illuminor at this point, and I think that he's going to be the starter out there week one. The one thing that you see out of Illuminor that's really surprised me is his ability to move guys off the ball in the running game. He's been a pretty powerful run blocker throughout camp. Putting him next to a guy like Shaq Mason is going to be a pretty formidable right side in terms of running behind those two guys. He's also maybe a little bit more athletic at this stage of his career than Marcus Cannon was. Certainly last year, Cannon had some trouble moving around and getting out in front of running plays, stretch plays, toss plays out to the outside, things that they wanted to try to get the corner on, where they were having trouble as a whole unit because of their lack of speed from side to side, being able to run out and get those plays going. I think Illuminor might give them a little bit more athleticism at that spot. I'm pretty optimistic about what we've seen out of him. It looks like he might actually be an upgrade at the end of the day over 2019 Marcus Cannon.
We'll do rapid fire style here just to knock out a couple
My
of questions
favorite.
about specific people. Devon Ross, is he a slot receiver or outside?
I think he's probably more of a slot, but he can do a little bit of both, and I think he's got a chance to make this team as like sort of the fifth or the sixth receiver on the depth chart.
What's up with Bo Allen?
Still kind of waiting to see Bo Allen. I had heard that it might be a foot issue. He was potentially seen spotted in a walking boot at some point. So I'm going with a foot issue from what I can understand. And we'll see when he gets back out there. But Byron Cowart is doing pretty good.
Chase Winovich going to have a significant increase in snaps and playing time this season. How's he looked so far?
Really good. I think Winovich, with him, to me, obviously everyone can make improvements, but it's more just building on what he did last year and doing it in a bigger sample. Last year he plays 30% of the snaps. He has 5.5 sacks. Okay, let's say if we make it 60%, can he have 8.5 sacks? Where can he kind of take that next step? That's really the question for Chase, but he looks really good out there.
Our friend Greg Bedard called the Patriots offense bully ball. Do you agree?
I agree 100%, Russ. That's the one thing I wish that I had thought of it first, and Greg, of course, thought of it first, as he normally does. And that's the best way, without getting specifically into the schemes that they're running, because we're not allowed to. That's the best way to describe this offense right now. You got the biggest and the baddest bully in town in Cam Newton, 6'5", 250-pound linebacker playing quarterback. You got a bunch of big receivers. You got a couple of different tight ends that can block. You got a big run blocking offensive line that's very, very good. That's going to be the offense. It's going to be a lot of misdirection. It's going to be a lot of option football, and it's going to be a lot of Cam Newton right down people's throats, and I'm all here for it.
We'll end with this one. No Tom Brady, no boogeymen, but is it possible that the Patriots still could have a better team this year than they did last?
I don't think the defense is going to be as good. I think the defense will face some regression. You're not going to turn the ball over as often as they did last year. They're not going to probably get the same pass rush that they got last year because of the departures this offseason. But on the offensive side of the ball, and this is not an indictment on Brady. We know he's the greatest of all time. But on the offensive side of the ball, I do think they might be a little bit better off with Cam at quarterback just because they don't have outside receivers that are great at creating separation, but they might not necessarily need that when they have a guy like Cam under center that can run, and the defense is thinking about that the whole game, and it kind of opens up a lot of more opportunities on the outside. Maybe less man coverage, maybe a little bit more zone, kind of focusing in on Cam. Also, you have to worry about all the backfield actions and what's going on with the football back there and who has it and who's running with it, and then that presents the opportunity for some of these receivers to get a little bit of a head start. So in a way, I feel like this offense is better off and was built for a mobile quarterback, and it kind of lends itself to me to suggest that maybe Bill Belichick drafted guys like N'Keal Harry not with Tom Brady in mind. Maybe N'Keal Harry was really the receiver that they wanted for the next iteration of this offense, and we're starting to see that a little bit more, and I think it's exciting to see, sort of Josh McDaniels have this opportunity to have a more dynamic quarterback back there that can create with his legs.
I love it. Well, that will do it for this edition of the Patriots live Q&A, but we have tons more training camp coverage that we're churning out on a daily basis for in-depth analysis of what Evan's seeing on a daily basis out at camp. You can find that on our YouTube channel at Patriots Press Pass. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss out on exclusive Patriots content. You can also follow us on Twitter at PatriotsCLNS. We have daily updates from camp on there as well. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Subscribe, people.